You're listening, or you're watching a new edition of Empty the Bench, episode number 51. Tom Albano here with Fodera Nick Morgasen. Gentlemen, a whole change of plans, we had a plan today. We had a whole thing, and once again, just as it seems to be a theme on this show, plans will change at the very last minute.
Wait a minute. So we're kind of following unwritten rules at this point, right?
Yes, and
that's a reference.
Roger Kuchek. Yeah, go ahead.
Right, that's a reference you're not going to understand now because that's where we were going to go in this episode. But I thought, hey, let's just throw it in because we're not going to get to it anyway.
Because Roger Tuchek was riding in on a red hot rail to screw up our schedule.
Boys, we will get to it, but we can't get to it right now. We'll get to it later in this episode. But our top story, no longer about the unwritten rules of Major League Baseball. No, we're back to dealing with COVID. But we're not dealing with baseball and COVID. No, we're dealing with football and COVID.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so this is a still developing story, and we've been all over the place today. So I'm just going to read it. This is courtesy of the Score, probably my favorite sports news app. So I'll just read it here. According to Adam Schefter of ESPN, the NFL is investigating a number of positive COVID-19 tests from its teams using a single laboratory in New Jersey. The statement from the NFL says, Saturday's daily COVID testing returned several positive tests from each of the clubs serviced at the same laboratory in New Jersey. We are working with our testing partner, BioReference, to investigate these results while the clubs work to confirm or rule out the positive tests. Clubs are taking immediate precautionary measures as outlined in the NFL and NFLPA's health and safety protocols to include contact tracing, isolation of individuals, and temporarily adjusting the schedule where appropriate. The other laboratories used for NFL testing have not had similar results. And the teams that... Okay, so that's one thing we were trying to figure out, which we now have figured out. So there's multiple labs that the NFL is using, but there's something going on with one of the labs that they use in New Jersey. And the teams that have been affected in this case are the Cleveland Browns, the Chicago Bears, the Buffalo Bills, the Detroit Lions, Pittsburgh Steelers, Minnesota Vikings, New York Jets, Green Bay Packers. Nick, before the show, you found New England Patriots, and there is a mystery 10th team that we don't know about that has been impacted. Mystery. Yeah, a mystery, but that has been impacted with irregular COVID-19.
That's the famous team to be named later.
Right. According to Schefter, 9 false positives for the Bears. The Jets have had 10 false positives, and the Vikings have 12 presumptive positives. Again, they all come from the same New Jersey lab. The Browns and Bears have postponed their morning practices to earlier this afternoon.
But you know what the sick part about this whole thing is? This is all going to go back to blaming Roger Goodell, and we're going to say, all right, Roger, what the heck did you do? What's wrong with your labs?
Just more.
Who did you make mad? Who did you skimp on? Who did you refuse to pay?
There is a few more details to the story. Unfortunately for the Bills, one of these players involved in the irregular test results scandal is starting quarterback Josh Allen.
But he's a false positive, right?
He is a false positive, but they're still going to have to take some precautions until they can have the proof, like, the 2 negatives or whatever. So,
but isn't this just great? And I feel like, unfortunately, like, this is a sad situation, but I feel like don't get me wrong, there's definitely some comedy in this situation because
it's definitely dark comedy, but it's infuriatingly avoidable.
No, but the reason I say it's comedic is because, like Nick said, this is a total Roger Goodell situation where he tries to do the right thing. They set up all the COVID-19 situations, and now it becomes false positive.
And he gets screwed anyway. Well, I think, honestly, just going off my gut reaction to hearing this, it really is, to me, this really is the story of this country's response to coronavirus in microcosm, because it's really an indictment on how we as, a culture and as government, state and federal, have been unable, absolutely, utterly unable through inaction or just plain old maliciousness, not being able to get a lid on this.
Well,
But-
there's more, or a little bit more details to the story before you guys chime in. So they consider it, of course, more of a lab issue, and that's coming from a very reliable source to us, Kim Jones of the NFL Network. The Patriots and Giants also have been affected, but the Patriots reportedly don't consider the situation disruptive enough. And the Giants, as we were talking about before the show, there are no players or coaches who are impacted by this. It's just
So it would
support
be
staff.
personnel only that would be
Yeah.
affected.
Outside personnel. So
the NFL recently, this is according to Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, extended its daily testing period through September 5th. The league has conducted more than 100,000 tests for the coronavirus since training camp began in late July. Pardon me. Only 1% have returned positive.
I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that at all, and I'll tell you why I don't believe that at all. First of all, there are states in this country that can't get 100,000 tests done.
they can't afford it.
They can't afford 100,000 tests.
I mean, off the top of my head, Nick,
are you telling me that you all of a sudden marshaled the manpower to be able to get this done?
Well, it's the NFL.
Well,
It's the NFL, but the NBA is different. But I'll get into that later. But go ahead, Nick.
what I was going to say, and I want to make the point before I forget it, is we were talking about the amount of positive tests, not just in sports, but Nick, you started to allude to what's going on around the country. They're talking about some of the projections that by December, they're talking about over 300,000 people testing positive for the COVID test. So what's going to happen? We're going to run into the flu. We're going to run into flu season and all that stuff. What are we going to do?
And if I may use an anecdotal example, just to demonstrate how screwed up this system is, my mother just recently, as in a couple of weeks ago, got a COVID test because she was feeling certain symptoms, and I want you guys to guess. See if you can guess how long it took those results to get back.
Couple weeks.
10 days.
Figure.
10 days.
Couple weeks.
8 friggin' days. Mind you, it turned out negative, thank God. But what if she was coughing up a lung? What if she was on the bed? It was literally staying in bed, dying. And a test that takes 8 days to come back and come back wrong.
I'll give my own anecdote. So my little brother just moved back to college. Now, the good news is only 4 people at this college have tested positive, and they tested positive before they even got on campus. So they're not even on the campus. But he needed to go through a COVID test and need to get written statements and all just to get on campus.
Is he in dorm room jail?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my point is just similar to Nick. He didn't get the results and the written statement or whatever till like the 11th hour.
Tests that take this long to come back, and not even come back the right way, are essentially useless. They're not even worth the paper they're printed on.
And yes, Nick, yes, we can debate about false positive, false negative. Maybe these guys have it or whatever. But let's pretend let's say these are false positives. If you are having these problems, maybe it's good that there's multiple labs for testing for the NFL. But if one lab is having all these problems, what's the contingency?
That's my thing, because false positive, it's one thing if it falls on the patient, because coronavirus is a very, very tricky disease and the symptoms can come in and out.
There's no symptoms.
But if the false positives are coming from faulty lab equipment, then the blame is.
Yes, they will take precautions, which is good. But you're screwing the teams up. You're screwing the players' lives up. You're screwing their teammates up. They don't know if they're being affected or not. On a minor stakeholder level, you're affecting fantasy players. You're affecting all these analysts.
Right.
You are affecting everybody.
But wait a minute. I mean, to be honest, I don't think if fantasy is the.
I said minor stakeholders.
No. But
Yeah,
I was just going to
they
say
are becoming increasingly more prevalent. I mean, if you look at the commercials, betting is king now.
Right, but I was just going to say, if that's the least of your concerns, then I think we'd be in good shape. But at the same time, just to go back to more of the college situation, which you were referring to, Tom, if you guys saw what happened with UNC, where they had hundreds, and I'm not stuttering when I said that, hundreds of positive tests. They kicked all the kids off campus into hotels so that they could do off-campus learning. And on top of that, since we're talking about antidotes, I found out that a family member in California has COVID, and they're in the hospital now. It's a crazy situation. COVID is becoming 6 degrees of separation now.
My sympathies. My definite sympathies.
We have 3 weeks. 3 weeks from today is the first Sunday of football. Hell, for the Chiefs and the Texans, it's even more time. Time is of the essence, because in 18 days and an hour from now, they kick off the season in Kansas City.
So if you think that you're going to be able to set up a testing apparatus that is able to give you the positive test you need in the time frame you need it in, and be able to create protocols that players can follow, and they won't be incentivized to break them, or let me rephrase that, they will be properly penalized if they do break them. If you think that's all of that is plausible within 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
That is a fantasy.
It's not happening.
Fantasy.
I'm going on the record right now, and I'm going to say the season does not start on time.
It's egg on all of our faces, because we were the ones making fun of the bubble concept when we heard the NBA were.
Yeah, and the NBA is smelling like roses. Great. The NBA smells like roses right now because of it.
They're doing great.
NBA is doing great. The NHL is doing great. Baseball looks like a bleep show.
Yeah, it does. It really is a garbage fire.
We just lost our Subway Series, especially since we're New York fans. We just lost our Subway Series because of it.
The Yankees, with all their injuries, may have to play 3 sets of 7-inning doubleheaders next weekend.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I think they were supposed to play the Mets anyway. So
no, that's my point though. They have to, but with all the limited off days and everything, they got to shuffle the schedule around, and they may not make 60 games. Not to mention, the Cardinals are still in the process of playing 11 doubleheaders to make up their games.
I'm going to put, by the way, another bold statement. People are going to be angry at me for it. There's no way the Cardinals make up all these games.
No, there's not going to. And as we're about to move on to our baseball segment here, I'm just going to say this. The MLB, I said part of me is concerned, but part of me was also happy that it's back. I regret saying that latter part. This was a major, major mistake. And they're obviously not going to cancel now with all the money that's involved. But they should, if there was a way to, they need to pull the plug.
By the way, it's interesting you say money, Tom, because Michael McCarthy, who is a writer for Front Office, put out some pretty insane broadcasting rights fees, because those are up for this coming NFL season.
Right.
You want to take a guess on what the rights fees are for the?
No, I couldn't even fathom. Right now.
So according to his report, the NFL could nearly double its broadcasting rights fees for CBS, NBC, Fox, and ESPN during current round of contract negotiations. Predict sports TV experts that would bring the NFL to close to $10 billion in TV rights from the current $5 billion.
Jeez.
How are we going up when we're at risk for people dying from the virus?
I was just thinking about this today. The baseball, and I'd say more so for baseball than football, but I can't wait to see these TV contracts burst. I can't wait to see what happens.
Because it's coming, and it is going to be gloriously apocalyptic when that happens.
So what are they trying to accomplish by raising the fees?
Because everyone is desperate for sports. Even Nick, who is saying sports really shouldn't come back till we have a vaccine. Even Nick has admitted before in the show, if the NFL came back in time, for America, that's a morale boost.
It's a morale boost, but like you just said, I've been saying that it's not going to be 100% safe. You're not going to be able to get the guarantees you want unless there is a vaccine.
Right, that's understood, but shame on the NFL for doubling the rights fees. That's ridiculous, for crying out loud.
Much in the same way that grifters would charge $25 for bottles of water to somebody who's just been, through the desert.
And what about fans? There's no fans, so how can you raise fees if there's no fans?
They profit off of misery. This is late capitalism for you.
I don't understand, but that.
All right, very quickly, because we have to move on and quickly wrap up because we're running out of time. Let's talk about the situation from last week. Fernando Tatis Jr. hits the grand slam on a 3-0 count, and everybody goes insane.
Everybody
goes and wets their Pampers.
That's a good reference, but I was going to say, like, everyone all of a sudden became 1960s baseball skeptic.
Well, I was going to say, some of them insane in a good way. Padres, what have they now? 5 grand slams in 6 or 7 games?
I mean, they can hit.
It was 7 straight games, I think, by the way. They broke a record.
Well, congratulations, Padres, congratulations. After spending all that money on Machado and Hosmer and building up the best farm system in baseball, it's about time you did something.
See, why is it? And, of course, Jace Tingler was the Padres manager who threw Tatis Jr. under the bus after having hit that grand slam.
Go F himself.
Because I wouldn't go that far, but I would say, why do we keep protecting the feelings of these pitchers? Pitchers, and those of us who know baseball know that pitchers are a bunch of temperamental whiners. People who are pitchers know that. The temperamental whiny head cases.
Wait a minute. I got to ask one thing, though. And this is, and I asked Tom this. I'll ask Nick this as well. When you have a 3-0 count, okay, and I think you know where I'm going with this.
Right, okay.
Why
do we swing or not?
No, that's not even where I was going. I was going to say, on a 3-0 pitch, why are you laying an egg on 3-0? I never understood that. If you
wanted to hit it, don't throw it.
Right. Well, I was going to say, on a 3-0 thing, because I have the list of unwritten rules right by me, I never considered the 3-0 thing to be an unwritten rule. I thought that was more a hitter strategy. Hey, you have, in these next 3 pitches that he throws, if one of them goes out of the strike zone, you get a free base. It's getting on base any way you can.
Right. That's part of it. So you have a 3-0 count. You have 4 pitches now to earn a walk.
Because strike 3.
Well, you know what I mean. But yeah.
And there are more unwritten rules in baseball than I thought existed. I mean, Tom was just in pre-show meetings. He was literally reading off the list of unwritten rules that are on the internet.
Funniest. It was
making my head spin.
And some of them are not unwritten rules. They're just
we chalk up more to superstition.
Yeah, they're more
because the no-hitter ones are on there. You don't talk when there's a no-hitter. You don't talk to the guy. You don't mention it. That's more superstition, I think.
But the ones like walking over the mound after you hit a ground out or a fly ball, that's pretty dumb. Or you don't step in the batter's box while the pitcher's warming up.
No, I think I understand that. Each of you needs to have your own space.
Some of them do make sense.
I'd say now, don't bunt to break up a no-hitter. Yes, I agree with us when we were saying before. It's stupid, but I've been thinking about it. It is kind of scummy. Everyone was up in arms when it happened to Scherzer, I think it was.
Wait a minute. So what happens if you hit a 60-foot dribbler? Like you're swinging for the fence and you hit a 60-foot dribbler. Isn't that kind of like a bunt?
Not really, because
Luis Gonzalez won the 2001 World Series on a bloop double.
I know. No, but my point, there is a difference between this and this.
Yeah, and that. Yeah.
No, but I'm saying, like, you're going to be pissed if someone beats out a 60-foot dribbler.
Of
course you're going to be mad. It's just a matter of, look, unwritten rules implies that this is something universal that everybody on the field has agreed to, implicitly or not. And that's not the case, because a lot of players, especially the younger ones, don't even know what these rules are. How can people know what they are if they're unwritten? Nobody can tell them. I think these unwritten rules a lot of times are just, okay, we don't want to make the pitcher mad because then he can throw at us.
Oh, by the way.
Wait a second. I need to add one thing, which is, how is your own manager throwing you under the bus when you hit a grand slam for your team?
Well, I was going to say, that part was stupid. Here's what you say. Because, you know what? Maybe I can kind of agree on you missed a sign or you ignored my sign, I'm the coach or whatever, but you don't go and throw your guy under the bus. You to the media, you say, you know what, I'm disappointed by it, but he hit a grand slam. I'm happy for him, happy for my team. We won the game. Maybe if you do anything, kangaroo court fine. That was always a thing that the Yankees did.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. But I don't understand. So I'm just going to circle back here and basically say, if you're a 3-0 count as a pitcher, don't lay an egg. Or actually, you know what? I've seen this happen more with younger pitchers in today's game. Throw a breaking ball on 3-0.
Walk him. Here's a good idea. Walk him.
You say, well, I don't know. How do you guys feel about walking? I mean, remember when Barry Bonds got walked when the bases loaded?
Would you rather give up 1 run or 4?
Well, here's my whole thing about that fallacy of a predetermined outcome.
That's what I was going to say. But the other thing I was going to say is Barry Bonds was a totally different caliber of a hitter way back when, and you were afraid every time he came up to bat that he was going to put one over the
wall, into the seats,
into the water every time, into the bay. So totally different circumstances. I mean, Buck Showalter, when he was the manager of the Diamondbacks, I don't know if you guys remember this. Remember he walked in a
that's
run?
what I just said.
Yeah, so basically he took giving him an RBI and a walking in a run over pitching to him. You don't see that in today's game. What do you expect? But you left out one more unwritten rule, though. Yeah. Okay. I was going to say he stole third base also.
Well, I think that one was in retaliation to all the feedback from the day before. I think that one was more sticking out the middle finger.
It was the same day.
No, that was the next day.
You sure? I thought he did it in the game.
But still, it was after the grand slam. So I'd say that's more sticking out the middle finger. By the way, one last thing here. I know the Rangers of 2020 is completely different from the Rangers of 2007, but it's very hypocritical for you to cry out violating unwritten rules when meanwhile you, if I remember correctly, ran up the score in the 8th and 9th inning on the Orioles to beat them 30-3 in game 1 of a doubleheader.
By the way, baseball historians, I told this to Tom, and I think he knows what I'm about to say here. Excuse me. You do know in the official scoring of that game, there was a save in that game, right?
A very rare, nearly impossible, probably the only time it had happened, since like the 1960s or whatever, a 12-out save.
Well, right. So I was going to say that according to MLB rules, if you pitch 4 innings in a game in relief, apparently you get a save, which I didn't know.
Neither did I.
So.
Oh, God. This is why we keep having problems with baseball, folks.
So we have COVID rules, we have unwritten rules, we have a lot of rules we got to follow and watch as sports.
And damn it, we didn't even get to the NBA like promised. Oh, well.
Next week.
Yeah, I'm clamoring. I'm clamoring over here because the NBA and the bubble has actually been good playoff basketball for crying out loud.
I know we have great playoff basketball, great playoff hockey, and we can never get to any of it because
this is why
we can never get to it because the NFL always ends up barging in. Watch next week. Next week we're gonna have to have the show open up with Roger Goodell has spontaneously combusted.
No, Nick, this is where you say that line that you're famous for saying all the time.
Oh, I know. This is why we can't have nice things.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Thank you.
This entire year has been like that. This is why we can't have nice things.
And I think that's a good way to end the episode, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah. So if this is the end of episode 51, if you like what you listened to and what you saw, make sure to give us a like here on Facebook at ETD Sports. And with that, make sure to also give us a follow. That way you'll be the first to be notified of all our posts, all of our live streams, and more. If you like news updates, make sure to follow us on Twitter, also at ETB Sports. You'll see news updates on all that's going on in sports. You'll see hot takes from some of us here who run the social media. And make sure to follow us on our own individual accounts at N Morgasen Radio. If you like hot takes and a whole bunch of ranting on the Yankees and Jets, Nick writes words, and Thomas J. Albano. If you like MMA, boxing, all that combat stuff, go follow me. It's a heaven for you. And make sure to go to make sure you go to enterthedungeonsports.com, our official website. With that, Nick Fodera, Nick Morgasen, I'm Tom Albano, and we'll see you next week for episode 52. 1 year anniversary.
Oh my God.
Still, with that in mind, good night, everybody!
Good night, everybody.